Hello, this is going to be one of the first lessons we worked on in a class. I know some of the students are not able to attend, so I promised to make a few videos as to how should we begin the class, as to how I would normally begin the class for some. As far as this assignment, again, it's not a graded assignment, but again, it's to kind of work out the kinks, kind of like exercise ideas and concepts about drawing, even though it doesn't seem like drawing, but they are very, very necessary, and at least it's a different perspective for some that are used to just approaching drawing or art as if it's just a direct application. I've never really made any videos, but let's see how it goes. As far as this one here, again, we are incorporating transitions as one of the most key important components, because with the idea of transitions, we create this idea of movement, and that is something that the paper does not have. Paper is very, very flat, it's very, very two-dimensional, and again, it doesn't really have this sense of life as if it was a sculpture or a piece of clay or something like that. So I definitely want to incorporate transitions as much as possible. And of course, we are working with the ideas of line. Line can be used in many, many ways. It doesn't have to be used as far as within drawing an object or drawing a shape. It can be used in rhythm to create this idea of transition. So again, we want to try to incorporate this as much as we can, and we are going to try to incorporate this idea of rhythm with the use of lines and the way we actually hold, not necessarily the pen or the Sharpie or the pencil, but we're going to call this a tool. So again, you can hold it in many, many different ways, but the only thing you do not want to hold it like as if you're actually holding it as a form of a writing pencil or a pen. Normally when you have lines in your sheet of paper, most people, when I see them hold it, they're very, very tight. So I usually, and that's very, very normal because usually you have very, very short movements. And it makes a lot of sense, they wiggle. But again, if you had a longer space, would it be as easy to do? So not necessarily, seems like a little bit of a struggle. So again, the idea is to hold it with the tips of your fingertips as much as possible. There's a lot of memory in your hands, and your hands want to hold it a certain way because they just assume. But again, you really want to hold it with the tips of your fingers, that way you can feel and also be able to move, and you can do a lot more. One thing I'm going to ask you guys not to do as well is bend your wrist. When you bend your wrist, you have a tendency to limit your movements as well. So when you are drawing and your wrist is bent, well, you really can't really move very, very much. But if you have your wrist straight, you're able to move your entire arm along with the hand, along with the wrist. And this is what we're looking for. We're looking for these very, very clean lines. Eventually I'll show you how to draw curved lines, but right now we're looking for this nice straight line. That's very, very clean, very, very elegant, and it just shows very, very well. It shows control, and that's what we really want from the very beginning. As far as drawing within a space, I'll give you a challenge to draw some lines going across. These are the samples that we did in class, or at least I did in class with them. They used an entire sheet of paper, an 18 by 24, and we drew all the way across. And then from there, we used different types of lines for every different transition. And the objective was to make sure the transition continues to change as it moves through space. So your eyes have to be able to tell, okay, is it too gray? Is it kind of like maybe too dark and then too light? That means we need to require a little bit more blending. The whole idea of blending is to incorporate one body into another body, but it seems seamless. We know about blending things. We blend milkshakes. When we clean a screen, we have a tendency to wipe it in a circular motion to kind of blend everything away so it looks smoother, so it looks cleaner. So we have two transitions here I did during class with the students. One's more of a cross-hatching, and one is a little bit more of a curly line that seems to overlap. But the most important thing is you keep moving into space, that you want to make sure that you open the lines as much as possible to allow more of the white to show through, making it seem grayer and grayer. And this is the illusion that we're talking about, that is something that the paper does not give. You have to work for it, which are these ideas of movement. So the better the transition, the better the illusion of movement is. And anything that is round, we would apply this, or we want to create the sense of movement from left to right. But again, this is a power that you can have just by being able to manipulate the darks to the lights. But again, you do want to make it smooth, very, very soft, very, very clean. And again, for every different transition, you want to try to incorporate a different type of line. Now, the lines are not labeled. You just create them yourself. Whether you want to do little squared ones or rectangular ones or little wavy ones. But again, it's up to you. But again, you want to make sure you accumulate. And of course, you open, and you get to the very, very lightest. At the very, very end, the lines can be so light, so soft, so thin that it almost seems like they're faintly there, and that's what you want. Because we are using a Sharpie, and the Sharpie is very, very bold. So it'd be difficult for some to actually make it lighter. I'm working in a smaller screen here, so I'm going to make the drawing just a little smaller. But again, angle the paper. So again, I'm going to go from darker to lighter, this direction. The reason why I turn the paper is because I want to make it easier for me. I really wouldn't want to do it like this, just because I have to be awkward. It's going to be awkward for me to kind of put my arm over and pull it this way. So it's a lot easier for me just to kind of turn it this way. And again, keep my wrist straight, put my arm within the space, and I can push the transition backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. And again, all this time, my eyes getting a little bit more exercise, are being more acute at looking at dark spaces and light spaces, and also some areas that possibly could be blended just a little bit better. So when I need to blend a little bit more, I'll come back, I'll clean up, I'll come back, add more, maybe 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines, or maybe I'll go over the whole thing again. Let me just work on the line. So again, very, very sporadic line. Again, in the very, very beginning, you'll build a little bit of memory for it. At first, it'll be kind of like, you almost have to try. But after a while, you don't really have to try to do the line anymore because you build a little bit of memory for it. And then you can actually just kind of just focus on the actual transition, or at least the end result. Let me grab the corner here. So as I move this way, I'm going to try to lighten. As you can see here, I still have the motion, but I'm lifting on the Sharpie just enough where it's barely grazing. My Sharpie is not very, very fresh. It's kind of a little bit on the dry side. Let me get a fresher one that actually releases the ink a little bit better. But as far as the transition now, I just went on one quick pass, but I do notice that it seems a little heavy here. It seems right here there's a little bit of a break. As far as the rest of it, it looks pretty decent. Maybe I could add one more little line there. But again, if I wanted to make it seem as if it's blending or transitioning or moving, this was not very good either. Okay, let me get it this one. This is better. So again, this is a very good exercise. Again, I would not grade it, is because it's a practice. I want people to practice a little bit. I want people to kind of get a feel for, just moving and using different parts of your hand, different parts of your arm, treating the Sharpie as a tool. And again, not as a drawing instrument. And again, you can always pause a little bit, take a look at it, but it's looking pretty good. As far as what is it supposed to look like, well, it doesn't look like anything, but at the very, very end, usually these lines usually have a sense of leaving a imitation of texture, almost if it was sand, almost if it were pebbles, or the rustling wind through grass. They leave some kind of texture, or at least it looks like some kind of texture. This one's dying too. Let me get this large one. So definitely Sharpies do go very, very quick. They don't make Sharpies as good as they used to. I think it's also the paper that I'm using. It's more absorbent, so it sucks it up very, very quick. But you can see how the transition is working. And again, what I do is I look at it over and over again. And when I look at it here, maybe a few more lines here, maybe a few little more lines there. If I'm really a little bit on the OCD side, I say, well, I'd really like to clean up the edges. I think those would make a big difference, at least to my eye. My eye would be a little bit happier. But here I've already kind of switched up my grip a little bit. I'm making some smaller little whimsy lines just kind of fill in some of those little spaces. As far as, again, you can stay inside the square or the rectangle. You don't have to. But again, you really want to move and create that energy But most importantly, towards the end, so do you see that transition? Do you see that flow? You can also look at the paper on its end. Sometimes you can kind of see the transition a little bit better. But again, I want people's eyes to become a little bit more acute and more sensitive to light and dark. And from there, just, keep practicing a little bit. This is a really good warm up for the hand as well. Help to people, just kind of get a little bit more familiar and not to think that everything has to be done very, very slow. But it's looking pretty decent. So any little area where you feel like maybe you could use more, definitely in the beginning, you say, this needs to be darker. I really like to see more contrast. So again, on your syllabus, I did leave a lot of nice vocabulary, and that vocabulary is used all the time. So again, transition, very, very important. And we're going to do transition with every new medium that we come across, whether it be color pencil, if we did crayons, or in this case here, using the markers, using lines, that's the way to go. So again, it's not nearly the scale of the first, but it definitely has a nice transition. It has really nice flow. If I had to look at an area that looks kind of grayish, see, that looks kind of grayish. If I had to kind of isolate from here to here, that does look a little bit gray. So maybe I can incorporate a few little lines. So again, I want everyone's eyes to become more acute. And again, you really don't have to do a lot of work, because it's not done perfectly. There's no such thing as perfect. It's just a matter of trying to get that nice flow, trying to get that nice transition. So again, I had everyone do at least 6 transitions with different types of lines, different line qualities, and from there we'll move on. Okay, so it'll be your first one, and I'll show you another video right now is how do we continue to do others.